Madison homeowners, my name is Steven. This video is a public service announcement for any homeowner that's dealing with hot and cold rooms in their house. This video is meant to be educational and to help you make a good step towards solving that issue in your house. I run Madison Home Performance. We do HVAC design and building diagnostics, building testing here in Madison. If we can be of service, please reach out. Let's talk initially about the two parts of every house to set the stage for solving your issue. Whether you have a $3 million house or a $300,000 house, all homes have two main parts. The first part, and the most important part, is the container, okay? This is the thing that separates the outside from the inside. It's made up of the exterior walls, the insulation in those walls, the airtightness of those walls. It's also made up of the exterior windows and the exterior doors, and like your attic plane, okay? The whole job of this shell, envelope, skin of the house is to keep the outside out and the inside in, okay? The next main part of the house is the HVAC. This is also called the engines of your house, also called the mechanicals. This system manipulates the expensive air that you live in. You live in a volume of air. You live in a pool of air, okay? And that air is expensive because you pay money every day, every minute of every day to heat that air. You pay to cool that air. You pay to humidify that air, and you pay to dehumidify that air. So you don't want that air leaking out, or you don't want outside air coming in unless it's with your permission and when you say so. So you want control over your indoor environment. If you have a hot or cold room in your house, it's either a building shell issue, an HVAC issue, or a combination of both those things. It's always one of those three options. Now, let's talk about the building shell issue first. If I go upstairs into this corner bedroom that's always cold in the winter and warm in the summer, and I pull out my blower door and I do an infrared scan, and I see that there's no insulation in any of the exterior walls in this corner room, I'm going to say the first thing we need to do is put insulation in those walls to slow the heat transfer from inside to outside or outside to inside. We need to contain the heat before we can control that indoor space. So in a fight between the building shell, which is one part of the house, and the mechanicals, which is the other part of the house, the building shell always wins. We always want to deal with the building shell first before we go and look at HVAC issues. A second building shell issue that we could be facing. If I have a bunch of windows in that room, and these windows are, from like the 1950s, they're old single pane double hung windows, and they're like not tight and they rattle, and there's a bunch of air leakage around them, and there's a bunch of can lights in the room, and there's a bunch of air coming from the attic down into that bedroom. That means I don't have a good air barrier between that room and the outside. So I'm getting a lot of infiltration and exfiltration in and out of that room. Again, I cannot contain the air in that room before I condition it. You have to contain it first before you can manipulate it. If you can't contain it, good luck. In that case, I'd want to either replace or air seal those windows, and I'd want to air seal the ceiling of that room, okay? You have to contain it before you can control it. So these are two examples where I need to address the building shell first before I can hope to gain control over that room. Now, let's say I put exterior insulation in both those walls and those windows. I make them super airtight, and I make sure that the ceiling of that room is also airtight so that there's no air coming in, and I'm still having comfort issues. It's at this point that I now turn to the HVAC system. But if I've ruled out the building shell, this is an HVAC issue. And if I'm not getting enough heating or cooling to that room, this is an airflow issue. Airflow is the medium that delivers the heating or the cooling to that space. So your next question is this, Stephen, what's my airflow supposed to be to this room? Or Stephen, how much heat and cooling is this room supposed to get? Nobody knows the answer to that question unless they do an HVAC design. And the first step in an HVAC design is to do what's called an ACA Manual J room by room load calculation. This calculation tells us specifically how many heating units and cooling units each room in your house needs. Once we know what the standard is, or once we know what the yardstick is, then we can compare what it's supposed to be with what we're actually getting. Okay, so I know some of you are going to say, well, geez, Stephen, I never had an HVAC design done. Nobody ever did it. How am I supposed to know how many heating units or cooling units I'm supposed to get to that room? I don't know. Nobody knows unless they do the math. So what can we do in light of this? Well, we can make some assumptions about what the airflow is supposed to be at the unit itself, and then test airflow at the unit. And we can also test duct pressure. If you have high duct pressure, it's like having high blood pressure. High pressure in your ducts means low flow. So there's some other testing I'm saying that we can do that can help to alleviate some of the issues. But the official way of knowing what our flows to the rooms are supposed to be, how many heating and cooling units the rooms are supposed to get, is by doing the math. And the math is the HVAC design. There's no getting around it.